Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachakwadash, Barakatah. Double honors to the elders and apostles and the righteous men of great millstone who teach us this truth and righteousness and sincerity and in brotherly love. And salutations to the hopeful elect, the 144,000 men of Yasharallah and the 1/3 men, women, and children of Yasharallah. Shalom. This is your brother Shamya, coming back at you one more time from the Great Millstone held in the Montana camp. We're just going to jump right into it, and we always like to make a disclaimer. We are not a hate group, and we're not an extremist group. We are a truth group, and we only bring out the truth according to the Bible, according to the word of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, okay? So I'm not going to make this lesson too long, and I'm going to title this lesson, Galatians 3:28 is only concerning Israelites. I repeat, Galatians 3:28 is only concerning Israelites. These 2/3 of our people, the wicked, these wacky-tacky Christians, they always run to John 3:16 and Galatians 3:28, you know. They'll always say, let's just read it real quick, because this is the go-to verse that they go to, and they'll just read it with no understanding. They'll just see the word Greek and they'll just go with it. And then they just say it with just pride, you know. But Galatians 3:28 is concerning Israelites. The whole New Testament, okay? The whole New Testament. This is Galatians 3:28, and I'm going to put it up to the camera. Because like I said, this is the go-to verse where these wacky-tacky Christians and the wicked 2/3 of our people, they run to this verse to try to make it seem like this is talking about the heathen and it don't matter if you're a Jew, no matter if you are Greek, and they don't even look into the word, dive into the word, and try to see what that word Greek is really talking about. Okay, Galatians 3:28, right here in the New Testament, and it reads right here. See, it says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. It says Christ Jesus, but that's not the Lord's name. The Lord's name is Yahweh Shai Hamashiach. Okay? The Lord and Savior of the nation of Israel, from the tribe of Judah. The Lord, Yahweh Shai Hamashiach, was a Hebrew Israelite, and we have many lessons to prove that. But anyway, this is where they go. See, it says, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Yahweh Shai Mashiach. Okay? So, this is one of the verses that they go to. And they see the word all, they see the word Greek. It says, see, all people, no. That's all amongst Israel. Okay? And we're going to prove it too. But let me read this one more time. Galatians 3:28, it says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither bond nor free, there is neither male nor female, for ye are all one in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Let's delve into this word Greek. Okay? Because the elders apostles of Great Millstone, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai, taught us how to look up words. Right? When a person reads Galatians 3:28, the average person, they have no idea what this is talking about. They don't go into the history, right? They don't go into the words. And then when they try to attempt to go into the words, they butcher that too. This is Galatians chapter 3 and verse 28 for the word Greek. Okay? The word Greek, the Strong's Concordance in Galatians 3:28 for Greek is G1672. Let's remember that concordance to Greek, right? This is Galatians 3:28 for the word Greek. Strong's Concordance G1672. And we're only doing these lessons for the elect of Israel and the 1/3 men, women, and children of Israel. To hell with you 2/3, and to hell with you heathens, and damn sure to hell with you Esau, Edom. Okay? So we got the concordance for the Strong's Concordance for Greek, G1672. Now check this out. Mark chapter 7 and verse 26. Let's read Mark chapter 7 and verse 26. Because we're going to prove that these Greeks that it's talking about, of course, in Galatians 3:28 and in Mark chapter 7 and verse 26, these are Israelites. And we're going to prove it because our people were scattered. And not only that, our people were scattered amongst the heathen. Okay? So it was especially in a certain time when we was in the Greek, when our people were in the Greek captivity, we carried on the customs of the heathen. They eat up the Greeks, they eat the real Edomite Greeks. Just like how it is today when you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, because you're Israelites, the Lord didn't call his people Negroes and Latinos and Native Americans. The Lord Yahweh Shem Shai called you the children of Israel, Yasharallah. It's just like today when they tell us that we're African American or Native American, you know what I'm saying, or Mexican American. No. And what do? We started carrying on the customs of the heathen. We of course, just like how we were Americanized now, that's exactly how it was back in the Greek and Roman times, when we started doing what they do. The Greeks, the Romans, the heathen, the Edomites. We started dressing like them. We started doing their customs. We started eating what they eat, all the abominable foods, doing all type of abominations. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, let me get this book real quick because I just got to prove this, and we have many lessons to prove that that what we're talking about, we're not lying. Just bear with me real quick, Akim. Let me get this book. And it says this is one of the books right here. Look at this. We prove all things. The Jews among the Greeks and Romans, our people, the Israelites, we were among these heathens, the Greeks, the Romans. A diasporan source book by Margaret H. Williams. This is just one source. So let's keep reading. Let's go back to this real quick. Mark chapter 7, verse 26. It says this. This is in the New Testament. It says this. The woman, matter of fact, I'm going to read verse 25. It says this. For a certain woman, matter of fact, I'm going to read verse 24. It says this. And from thence he arose and went into the borders of Tyre and Sidon, and entered into an house, and would have no man know it, but he could not be hid. For a certain woman, whose young daughter had an unclean spirit. Now check this out. In Mark chapter 7, verse 25, all you got to do is look into that word daughter, that will prove right here that not only was this woman that we're about to read in verse 26 was an Israelite, her daughter was an Israelite. Because all you got to do is look into the word daughter, and right here in verse 25 in Mark chapter 7, it will tell you the daughters of Zion, the daughters of Jerusalem. That's how we know in verse 26 when it says this. I'm going to continue to read verse 25. It says, for a certain woman whose young daughter had an unclean spirit heard of him and came and fell at his feet. Verse 26, it says, the woman was a Greek. Was she a heathen, or was she an Edomite? No. What she did was she basically was a Greek that spoke, that wasn't her nationality, but where she was at. You know what I'm saying? She spoke Greek. She took on the Greek customs. That's why they called her Greek. But did that make her a Greek, like a heathen? No. Just like exactly what we do this day, our people. Okay? My nationality is not American. Okay? My nationality is an Israelite, right? This is America is not my nationality. You know, African American is not my nationality. It's just like with this woman right here. But like I said, in verse 25, when it says a certain woman whose young daughter, you look into that word daughter. It will tell you the daughters of Israel, the daughters of Zion. Verse 27, the woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician, right? Matter of fact, right here, let me keep reading. It says, the woman was a Greek, a Syrophoenician by nation, right? It says, and she brought him that he would cast forth the devil out of her daughter. Okay? This is when Yahushua cast out the demons from this woman's daughter, right? But again, her nationality, she's an Israelite. She basically was just Hellenized. So let's get there real quick. So right here in Galatians, we go back to Galatians 3:28. It says Greek. Strong's Concordance G1672. It says Mark. We read Mark chapter 7 verse 26 for Greek. Because remember in Galatians 3:28 it says Greek. Mark 7:26 it says Greek. But right here in Mark 7:26, the concordance, the Strong's Concordance is G1674. In Galatians 3:28 is G1672. But guess what? G1674, it says this, feminine of G1672. Right? Because remember, this woman, she spoke Greek, but that doesn't mean that she was a heathen. She was an Israelite, and we're going to prove that. It says, Mark chapter 7, verse 26 for Greek, Strong's Concordance G1674, it says feminine of G1672. The same concordance that it has in Galatians 3:28, Greek, G1672, right? So now let's keep moving and grooving through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Now let's go to Acts chapter 6 and verse. Let's go to Acts chapter 6 and verse 1. This is Acts chapter 6 and verse 1. It reads. It says, and let me put this up the camera too. This is Acts chapter 6 and verse 1. It says this. Now in those days when the number of the disciples were multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Now wait a second. This is Acts chapter 6 and verse 1 in the New Testament. Notice how it says Grecians right there. So what is this talking about? Well, on the bottom of my page, check this out. On the bottom of my page in the Cliff Notes, Acts 6 and 1, if we go all the way over, because right there it gives us the where to go. Right there it says Grecians. So we go on the bottom of my page in the Cliff Notes to Acts 6 and 1. We stroll over right here. What does that say? Hellenists. Hellenists. Remember, Galatians 3:28, it says Greek. Strong's Concordance G1672. Mark chapter 7, verse 26 says Greek. Strong's Concordance G1674, feminine of G1672. Acts 6 and 1 says Grecians. Strong's Concordance G1675. See, in Acts 6 and 1, it says Grecians. So is that talking about heathens? No. That ain't talking about heathens. They ain't talking about Edomites. Who is that talking about? Well, we're finna prove it. Acts 6 and 1, it says Grecians. Strong's Concordance G1675, it says this. It says from a derivative of G1672. That proves that what we're about to read, Galatians 3:28, when it said there's neither Jew nor Greek, what is that talking about? It was that there's no difference between the Jews that knew that they were Jews, and there's no difference between the Jews, the Israelites that knew that they were Jews, Israelites, there's no difference between the Israelites that took on the Greek customs. That's why it was said in Galatians 3:28, for you are all one in a Mashiach. What was they talking about? That means all of you are Israelites. Ain't no difference between just because you are an Israelite that know you're Israelite, and then you are Israelite that speak Greek and carry on the Greek customs. Okay, but you're all Israelites. There's no difference between you. You all come from the stock of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what was said in Galatians 3:28. And we've proven that because, again, Galatians 3:28, it says Greek, Strong's Concordance G1672. Mark chapter 7 and verse 26, it says Greek, G1674, feminine of G1672. We've proven that those are talking about Israelites in Galatians 3:28. We're going to prove it. And Mark chapter 7 verse 26, it says Greek, G1674, feminine of G1672. Acts 6 and 1, when it says Grecians, it says Strong's Concordance G1675. Remember, on the bottom of my page in the cliff notes to Acts 6 and 1, it says Hellenist, right there. Hellenist. What is a Hellenist? Well, let's see. Acts 6 and 1. Grecians. Strong's Concordance G1675. From a derivative of G1672, it says a Hellenist. One who imitates the manners and customs or worship of the Greeks. That's exactly what our people do to this day. A lot of people say, "Oh, fuck that Hebrew Israelite shit. They fuck that." Everybody is one in Christ and you, John 3:16, which is bullshit. It's like the 2/3 of our people. That's why the Lord's going to destroy them, because they refuse to come back to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Shem Yahushai. They want to stay in this mindset. They want to stay in this captivity, and they want to continue to keep living their lives and rely and depend upon Esau, Edom. That's what they want to do. Just like what it says in this book right here. They want to stay just being, they want to stay being with the heathen, following the customs of the heathens, following the customs of Esau, like this American shit, being Americanized, even back, just like back then, So it says, from a derivative, this is Acts 6 and 1, Grecians G1675, from a derivative of G1672, just like what it says in Galatians 3:28, G1672, Mark 7 and 26, G1672, it says from a derivative of G1672, a Hellenist, one who imitates the manners and customs or worship of the Greeks and use the Greek tongue used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands. That's Mark chapter 7 verse 26. That was an Israelite woman who took on the Greek customs of the heathen. It says, and use the Greek tongue used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. Let's go to John chapter 19 and verse 20. John chapter 19 and verse 20. Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai. This is John chapter 19 and verse 20. And it reads, it says, matter of fact, I'm going to read, verse 18 in the New Testament. It reads this, John 19 19 to 20 in the New Testament. It reads, and Pilate wrote a title. Matter of fact, I'm going to read 18. It says, where they crucified. It says, where they crucified. Matter of fact, I'm read verse 17. It says this, and he bearing his cross went forth into a place called the place of a skull, which is called in the Hebrew Golgotha. Verse 18, where they crucified him and two other with him on either side, one and Yahushua in the midst. And Pilate wrote a title and put it on a cross, and the writing was Yahushua of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Verse 20, check this out. It says, this title then read many of the Jews, for the place where Yahushua was crucified was nigh to the city, and it was written in Hebrew and Greek and Latin. Why? Why was it written in? Because we know that we just read it. We know that the context is talking about the Jews, because it says right here in verse 20, it says, this title then read many of the Jews. So the context is concerning the Jews. It says, for the place where Yahushua was crucified was nigh to the city, and it was written in Hebrew and Greek, because we know that they were Hebrew Israelites. But why was it written in Greek and Latin? Didn't we just read the definition in Acts 6:1 for Grecians, G1675, from a derivative of G1672, a Hellenist, one who imitates the manners and customs or worship of the Greeks, and used the Greek tongue and used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. John chapter 19 and verse 20 for Greek, Strong's Concordance G1676. It says in the info definition, it says Hellenistically, i.e. in the Grecian language. Because remember when we read Acts 6:1, when it said there was a murmur between the Hebrews and the Grecians, we know who those Grecians are. They were Hellenists. Those were Israelites that were Hellenized and spoke and took on the customs and manners of the heathen. But that's not their native tongue. But they spoke Greek, but they were Hebrew Israelites. They just so happened to be speaking the Greek language, because they were what does it say for the definition? It says because they imitated the manners and customs of worship of the Greeks, and used the Greek tongue used in the New Testament of Jews born in foreign lands and speaking Greek. That's why that title was read. We're going to get that too, because right here it says, I'm going to read it again for Greek. In John 19 and 20, it says, Strong's Concordance G1676, info, Hellenistically, i.e. in the Grecian language, right? Greek, John 19 and 20. This is the easy version translation. Watch what it says. The place where they put Yahushua on the cross was near to the city. So many of the Jews read this notice. They could read it because Pilate had written the words in 3 languages. He had written in the Jewish language and in the languages of the Roman people, those are the Edomites, and the Greek people, the Edomites. We were scattered amongst these goddamn heathens. We spoke their language. We took on their customs. This is Acts 6:1 in the NIV translation. It reads in the footnotes. This is Acts 6:1 in the NIV translation. In the footnotes, it reads, that is Jews who adopted the Greek language and culture, right? Read it again. Acts 6:1 NIV footnotes. That is Jews who adopted the Greek language. Again, that's how we know that that woman in Mark chapter 7 verse 27. Mark chapter 7 verse 26 was a Hebrew Israelite, right? All you got to do is read verse 25 and also read verse 25 when it says daughter. Look into the word daughter. It's talking about the daughters of Zion, right? Acts 6:1. Acts 6:1 NIV footnotes. It says that is Jews who adopted the Greek language and culture. So Galatians 3:28 goes with Acts 6:1 when it says there is neither Jew nor Greek. There's no difference. That's what Paul was saying. All of you are Israelites. That was Paul's mission, is to show. Is like, look, we were all scattered. That's the mission that the Lord Yahweh Shai sent Paul on. To go to those lost sheep. To go to those Israelites that took on the customs of the Greeks, / Gentiles. Acts 6:1, NIV footnotes. That is Jews who adopted the Greek language and culture. Okay? Like we said, so Galatians 3:28 goes with Acts 6:1. Matter of fact, Acts 6:1 in the Amplified Version translation in the footnotes is two definitions in Acts 6:1. This is the first definition in the Amplified Version translation in the footnotes. It says, Jews born outside the Holy Land who spoke the Greek language and had adopted much of the Greek language. Acts 6:1, definition B, in the Amplified Version translation in the footnotes, it says this: native-born Jews who spoke Hebrew and lived according to Jewish customs. Let's read Acts 6:1 again. Now it makes perfect. Now it's starting to make perfect sense what it's talking about, especially Galatians 3:28. But we're gonna read Acts 6:1 one more again. Matter of fact, we're gonna read Acts 6:1 in the King James Version, and we're gonna read Acts 6:1 in the New Living Translation. Acts 6:1, it says this: and in those days when the number of disciples was multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians against the Hebrews because their widows were neglected. We already read it in Acts 6:1 in the Amplified Version translation for definition A and B. We'll read the definition again, Amplified. Footnotes for definition A. Acts 6:1 Amplified says footnotes: Jews born outside the Holy Land who spoke the Greek language and had adopted much of the Greek language. Acts 6:1 definition B: native-born Jews who spoke Hebrew and lived according to the Jewish customs. Let's read this in Acts chapter 6 and verse 1 in a New Living Translation, and I'm gonna put it up to the camera because we prove all things through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shai and the elders, apostles, great millstone, who the Lord set up. Acts 6:1 in a New Living Translation, it reads, it says, but as the believers rapidly multiplied, there were rumblings of discontent. The Greek speak. Y'all see that? For the scoffers. This is in the New Testament, New Living Translation. It says the Greek-speaking believers complained about the Hebrew-speaking believers, saying that their widows were being discriminated against in the daily distribution of food. And then in other translations, it will read, some translations, it will say the Hellenist, because we know what a Hellenist is, a Greek-speaking Jew, right? It will in other translation, it will also say the Greek-speaking Jews. It will tell you, it will say Greek-speaking Jews. This is Romans chapter 1 and verse 6. Romans chapter 1. So like Romans chapter 1 and verse 16. It reads, put this up to the camera. Now it makes sense now. This is only concerning Israel. See this? This is Romans chapter 1 and verse 16. It reads, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Hamashiach, for it is the power of Yahweh unto salvation to everyone that believeth. Who is that to everyone? To everyone of Israel that believeth. To the Jew first, and also to the Greek. We already proved that's not talking about the heathen. That's not talking about them. We just read that in Romans chapter 1 and verse 16. Now let's go to Romans chapter 10 and verse 12. Romans chapter 10 and verse 12. Romans 10 and 12, it reads, Romans 10 and 12, it says, put this up to the camera too. Romans 10 and 12 in the New Testament, it says, for there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, just like we read in Galatians 3:28, and we broke it down already. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the name, Salakia, read it again. For there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, over all who? Over all Israel, is rich unto all that call upon him. And then it says right there, verse 13, for whosoever is the whosoever of Israel. Okay? It says, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Okay? Now, real quick, bear with me, Akim. Because for the simple fact that that's what these heathens do. These wacky-tacky Christians, they'll take these verses which we just read, and we already proved it. Romans chapter 1 and verse 16, we read that. Romans 10 and 12, we just read that. Let's go to Colossians chapter 3 and verse 11. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 11. And of course, it's going to be some scoffers and some stupid-ass heathens, these stupid-ass Edomites, and the 2/3 of our people that's still going to come against this truth, even though we've proven it. This is Colossians chapter 3 and verse 11. It reads this in the New Testament. These are the go-to verses that they go to too, these heathens. When it's not concerning them, it's only concerning us. It says, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, see, just like we read in Galatians 3:28 and in Romans chapter 10 and verse 12. It says, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Hamashiach is all and in all. That all is Israel. We keep saying this over and over and over and over again. We got many lessons to prove that this is only concerning Israel. This is Romans 1 and 16. Now, Romans 1 and 16, right? Romans 1 and 16, I'm going to put this up to the camera. Romans 1 and 16. Romans 1 and 16. Let's read Romans 1 and 16. It reads this. In the New Testament, it says, for I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Mashiach, for it is the power of Yahweh unto salvation. We know who salvation is for. That's, matter of fact, I'm going to get that real quick. This is Isaiah 45 and 17. Isaiah 45 and 17. Let's see who salvation is for. And this is just one precept, but I'm going to just get this one because this is one of my favorites. Isaiah chapter 45 verse 17, it says, but Israel shall be saved in the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai with an everlasting salvation. It didn't say nothing about the other heathen ass nations. Ye shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end. Salvation is only for Israel. This is back in this is Romans chapter 1 and verse 16. It says, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Hamashiach, for it is the power of Yahweh unto salvation to the Jew first and also the Greek. And we don't got to keep going over it over and over again because we already proved it. And we got many lessons to prove it too. This is Romans chapter 1 and verse 16. Now, Romans chapter 1 and verse 16, on the bottom of my page in the Cliff Notes, check this out. Romans chapter 1 and verse 16, on the bottom of my page in the Cliff Notes, it tells us to go to Acts chapter 3 and verse 26. Let's go to Acts chapter 3 and verse 26. Let's read what it says. This is Acts chapter 3 and verse 26. It says this. Acts chapter 3 and verse 26. Put this up to the camera because that's what they told us to go to. It says, unto you first, Yahweh, B'Shem Yahushai, having raised up his son, Yahushai, sent him to bless you and turning away every one of you from his iniquities. Now notice what it says right there in the New Living Translation. It says, to the people of Israel. But I want to prove that too. Let's go to it. Let's see what it says. We're going to see what it says. We're going to go, let's see, what is that? Acts 3 and 26. Let's put it up to the camera too. Acts 3 and 26. This is Acts chapter 3 and verse 26. Because that's what they told us to go to when we read in the New Testament. Acts 3 and 26, it says, when God raised up his servant Yahushai, he sent him first to you people of Israel to bless you by turning each of you back from your sinful ways. Now remember, Romans chapter 1 and verse 16 in the bottom of my page in the Cliff Notes tells me to go to Acts chapter 3 and verse 26, which proves that Romans chapter 1 and verse 6 is talking about Israel. We just read it. Romans chapter 1 and verse 16 on the bottom of my page in the Cliff Notes, it tells me to go to Acts chapter 3 and verse 26. Now, Acts chapter 3 and verse 26, we just read that. Now, Romans chapter 10 and verse 12, right? What does it say in verse Romans chapter 10 and verse 12? Let's read that real quick. Romans chapter 10 and verse 12. And we're gonna wrap it up, Akim. Romans chapter 10 and verse 12. We read verse 12, and oh, this is beautiful. I'm going to put it up to the camera. Now check this out. We're going to show you that this is talking about when it says right here, Romans 10 and 12, it says, for there is no difference between the Jew and the Greek, for the same Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, over all is rich unto all that call upon him. Who is this talking about? Well, let's see. Verse 13, it says, for whosoever, who is that whosoever? We just said it, that whosoever is Israel, but we're going to prove it. Romans chapter Romans chapter 10, verse 13, it says, for whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua shall be saved. And we gave you one precept, salvation, right? Isaiah 45 and 17. But check this out. On the bottom of my page to Romans chapter 10 and verse 13, Romans chapter 10 and verse 13, look at what it says go to. Showing you that verse 12 and 13 is talking about Israel. See right there, Romans, where my thumb is, Romans chapter 10 and verse 13. It tells us to go to Joel chapter 2, verse 32. We read verse 13. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. Let's go to, they just told us to go to what? Joel 2:32. Let's go to it. Joel chapter 2 and verse 32. Let's see who this is talking about. It's because it says whosoever. Does it talk about the whosoever, everybody on the whole entire planet? When they call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved? No. That's talking about the Israelites. We're going to prove it. This is Joel chapter 2 and verse 32. I'm going to put this up to the camera real quick. Matter of fact, I'm going to read verse 27 and then I'm going to jump down to verse 32. It says this, and ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel. This is the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua speaking to his people, concerning his people. Because remember, right? Romans chapter 10 and verse 13, on the bottom of my page in the Cliff Notes, it tells us to go to Joel chapter 2 and verse 32. We read in verse 27 first, it says, and ye shall know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord your power. The Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua is the God of Israel, and none else. And my people shall never be ashamed. Who is the Lord's people? We just read it right there. The Lord said he's in the midst of Israel. Jumping down to verse 32, because that's where they told us to go. It says, and it shall come to pass that whosoever, because we know who that whosoever is. How do we know? Because we just read verse 27. Jumping down to verse 32, it says, it shall come to pass that whosoever, just like what it says right there in Romans chapter 10 and verse 13, when it says whosoever. Verse 32, and it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem. Where's the other heathen-ass nations? It just said Israel, Yasharallah, Zion, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. That's what it says. And it shall come to pass that whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, shall be delivered. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushua have said, and in the remnant whom the Lord shall call. All praise to Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, hallelujah. This is last one real quick. This is Colossians chapter 3 and verse 11. Now, when we read that Colossians chapter 3 and verse 11, it tells us to go to Galatians chapter 3 and verse 28. Matter of fact, I'm going to put this up to the camera. So we just doing these lessons for the edification of righteous men, women, and children of Yahshua. I'm going to put it up to the camera real quick. This is, put this up to the camera real quick. This is Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 11. This is Colossians 3 and 11. See right there? Look. When it says Colossians 3 and 11, see, it says where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Hamashiach is all and in all. Colossians 3 and 11 on the bottom of my page. What does it say go to? Right there. It says go to Galatians chapter 3, verse 27 and 28, which shows and proves that this is talking about Israel. This is Acts chapter 9 and verse 29. Acts chapter 9 and verse 29. Acts chapter 9 and verse 29, it reads, Acts 9 and 29. This is what it reads. In the New Testament, Acts 9 and 29, it says, and he spoke boldly in the name of the Lord, Yahushai, and disputed against the Grecians. And we know who those Grecians are. It says, but they went about to slay him. Now, the key point right here, it says Grecians, right? Ain't that exactly what we read in Acts 6 and 1? When they said there was a murmuring against the Hebrews, the Grecians against the Hebrews? We look into that word Grecians, Hellenists, Greek-speaking Jews. Right here, this is Acts 9 and 26. In the Easy Version translation, it says this. Saul also talked with, now this is Acts 9:29, remember? Because matter of fact, I'm going to put it up to the camera again. See how it says right there? And he spoke boldly in the name of the Lord, Yahushai, and disputed against the Grecians, but they went about to slay him. Acts 9 and 29, Easy Version translation, it reads, Saul also talked with the Jews who spoke the Greek language. You can't get around that, man. So when you read Acts, this is just a perfect example right here. Acts 9 and 6, it says, and he spoke boldly in the name of Yahushai, Hamashiach, and disputed against the Grecians. See, it says Grecians. So they think, oh, it's talking about just the Gentiles and everything. Look, man, let me read it again. Acts 9 and 29, Easy Version translation. Saul also talked with the Jews who spoke the Greek language. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash, Barakatah. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of the righteous men, a great millstone who teaches this truth and righteousness and sincerity and brotherly love. Let's stay strong, Akim. Let's keep pushing this truth. Let's keep running the race all the way into the end through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Let's stay strong, Akim. We almost home. Kwam Yasharala. Shalom.